The air in the deep Vatican archive, usually still and heavy with the scent of aged paper and stone, stirred with an unwelcome intrusion. Far beneath the grand dome of St. Peter's Basilica, a hushed, sterile environment that had guarded countless secrets for centuries was being disturbed. A solitary ancient wooden box, its surface rough with age, sat on a heavy oak table. Rusted iron bands wrapped around it like skeletal fingers, and a papal crest belonging to a forgotten century had once sealed it tight. Now those seals were broken. Monsignor Alaric, his thin lips pressed into a tight line of anticipation, slowly pried open the lid. A soft groan of protest escaped the ancient wood. Then a cloud of dust, centuries old and acrid, billowed out, thick and choking. It caught the light from the single focused lamp, dancing like tiny forgotten spirits in the confined space. Elena, a humble archivist present only by chance, felt a profound unease settle in her gut. She was there to catalogue a newly accessioned collection, a task far removed from the dramatic spectacle unfolding before her. Alaric, however, had specifically requested her presence for this particular unearthing, citing her expertise in ancient preservation, though Elena suspected his true motive was simply to have a witness to his grand moment. Alaric coughed, waving a dismissive hand through the dust, his eyes fixed on the box's contents. He reached in, his movements precise, and carefully withdrew a rolled scroll. His voice, usually a practiced murmur designed to soothe and impress, was now laced with a chilling triumph that made Elena's skin prickle. "This document," he declared, holding the scroll aloft as if presenting a trophy, "once read, will rewrite everything, and I will be the one to reveal it." Elena's quiet demeanor belied a sharp intellect, a mind that processed information with meticulous speed. She watched Alaric, a man whose ambition gleamed colder than the ancient keys he held. She knew his type. He saw history not as a sacred trust, but as a ladder to power. A subtle, almost imperceptible nod escaped her, a silent promise to herself that this forbidden secret, whatever it might be, would not be twisted for personal gain. Not if she could help it. The scroll's fragile parchment, though centuries old, seemed to glow faintly in the dim light, an ethereal luminescence illuminating cryptic symbols etched onto its surface. A shiver, like a cold breath from the distant past, ran through the room, raising the fine hairs on Elena's arms. The air grew heavy, charged with an unknown energy. Alaric's triumphant smile faltered for a fraction of a second, a fleeting hint of something far greater than he had anticipated stirring within the ancient text. It was a momentary flicker, quickly masked by his iron will, but Elena saw it. She saw the doubt, the sudden, sharp realization that he might have bitten off more than he could chew. Some secrets are best left buried, for their unearthing can unmake the world. The scroll, now carefully laid upon a dark velvet cloth, began to subtly unroll itself further, seemingly of its own accord. It wasn't just text that was revealed, but a complex, intricate, star chart-like diagram, its lines and points glowing with the same faint inner light. The symbols shimmered, shifting subtly as if alive. The air grew heavier, thick with an unknown, palpable energy that made the hairs on Elena's neck stand on end. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Elena's life before the Vatican was a stark contrast to the hushed ancient halls she now navigated. She grew up in a small, timeless Italian village, tucked away in the Umbrian hills, where the rhythm of life was dictated by the seasons. The scent of cypress trees mingled with the earthy aroma of olive groves, especially during the harvest when every family gathered to press their bounty. Her childhood was steeped in the deep-rooted Catholic traditions of the region, a quiet faith that shaped her understanding of history and humanity. Her family, though humble, possessed a rich intellectual curiosity. Her father, a schoolteacher, filled their small home with books, fostering in Elena a love for stories, for the past, and for the intricate beauty of ancient texts. It was in this nurturing environment that her sharp intellect began to truly blossom. Her exceptional academic abilities were recognized early. While other children played in the village square, Elena was often found poring over old manuscripts her father brought home, fascinated by the elegant script and the forgotten voices they contained. This natural inclination led her to pursue a specialized education in paleography and ancient languages, fields that captivated her mind. Her ultimate dream, a quiet but persistent aspiration, was to work in the Vatican archives. To her, it wasn't just a place of work. It was a sacred repository of human knowledge, a vast library holding the collective memory of centuries. The thought of being surrounded by such history, of being a guardian of those stories, filled her with a profound sense of purpose. Achieving this dream was no easy feat. It required years of rigorous study, an unwavering dedication, and countless hours spent deciphering obscure scripts and forgotten dialects. When the day finally came for her to enter the hallowed halls of the Vatican secret archives, Eleanor felt an immense pride, a deep sense of belonging. The initial awe and reverence she experienced were overwhelming. Every corridor, every shelf seemed to hum with the weight of centuries. She walked through those silent aisles, surrounded by millions of documents, each a testament to a moment in time, and felt a connection to something eternal. It was everything she had ever dreamed of, a place where history wasn't just studied, but lived and breathed. It was during these early years that she first encountered Monsignor Alaric. He was then a rising star in the Curia, charismatic and undeniably brilliant. His charm and intellectual prowess were immediately impressive. Elena, still relatively new and eager to learn, initially saw him as a mentor, a more experienced guide in the complex world of Vatican scholarship. She believed they shared a common goal, a pure, unadulterated search for truth within the sacred texts. He spoke eloquently about the importance of historical accuracy and the responsibility of those who guarded the Church's heritage. However, as time went on, Elena began to notice subtle hints of Alaric's underlying ambition, masked by his polished demeanor. He had a particular intensity when it came to documents that promised power or prestige, rather than a purely academic interest in historical insight. He seemed drawn to narratives that could elevate his standing, to secrets that could be leveraged. Elena, in her innocence and earnest dedication, initially dismissed these signs as mere academic drive, a natural enthusiasm for groundbreaking discoveries. She thought his focus on certain high-profile texts was simply a reflection of their historical significance, not a calculated move for personal advancement. She believed in the integrity of the institution and, by extension, in the integrity of its rising stars. Her own deep respect for the integrity of historical records and the sacred trust placed in archivists was a foundational belief. She saw her role as a custodian of truth, a silent guardian against misinterpretation or deliberate obfuscation. This unwavering ethical stance, rooted in her upbringing and her academic training, would soon set the stage for her future moral conflict with Alaric, a conflict born from his growing disregard for these very ethical boundaries. She valued the quiet work of preservation, while he sought the loud acclaim of revelation, a fundamental difference in their approach to the very history they were both sworn to protect. The initial admiration Elena held for Monsignor Alaric slowly began to crack, chipped away by a series of subtle but significant disappointments. One of the first instances involved a meticulous research project on obscure medieval papal bulls. Elena had spent months uncovering connections and deciphering faded Latin, bringing forth fresh insights. Alaric, having initially praised her work, later presented her key findings in a private seminar for senior clergy, subtly rephrasing them as his own emergent theories. When Elena gently approached him about it, he brushed her off with a charming smile, claiming it was merely a preliminary discussion, and that she would, of course, receive full credit in the eventual publication. The publication never materialized with her name on it. These veiled humiliations became more frequent. There were public meetings where Elena would offer a nuanced interpretation of a difficult text, only for Alaric to interject, offering a slightly altered version, often less accurate but more palatable to the conservative audience. He would then, with a solicitous air, gently correct Elena's minor oversight or youthful enthusiasm in front of senior Vatican officials. These dismissals were always delivered with a paternalistic smile, making them incredibly difficult to challenge without appearing insubordinate or overly sensitive. She would feel a flush of heat rise to her cheeks, her carefully constructed arguments dissolving under his practiced charm, leaving her feeling intellectually inferior despite knowing her research was sounder. Alaric's manipulation was masterful, a slow, insidious process. He would frequently assign Elena to undertake tedious, uncredited research tasks, often requiring weeks of painstaking work in dusty corners of the archives. He framed these assignments as learning opportunities or tests of loyalty, implying they were stepping stones to greater projects. Elena, still holding onto the belief in his mentorship, would dedicate herself completely. Yet the results of her labor invariably served his own advancement, providing him with the foundational data he needed for his own, more public and often groundbreaking presentations. Her contributions were always essential, but remained invisible, a quiet engine powering his ascent. The small injustices accumulated, gradually eroding Elena's professional standing. She found important projects steered away from her, with Alaric citing her lack of experience, despite her growing expertise in paleography and ancient languages. Discoveries she made, often through tireless effort, were either quietly absorbed into his work or attributed to a general team effort, where his name stood out prominently. He always had a plausible explanation, a soft-spoken justification that made her feel petty for even questioning him. Each slight was minor on its own, but together they formed a pattern, a clear trajectory of Alaric systematically sidelining her. The deeply hierarchical and traditional nature of the Vatican amplified the impact of Alaric's actions. Challenging a superior, especially a rising Monsignor with significant influence, was almost unthinkable. Doing so could not only end a career, but could also lead to social and professional ostracization within the tightly knit Vatican community. Elena understood these unwritten rules. Her upbringing had instilled in her a profound respect for authority, and the weight of centuries of tradition pressed down on her, making open confrontation seem like an impossible act of rebellion. This cultural pressure forced her to internalize her frustrations, allowing Alaric's behavior to fester. Elena's internal struggle grew more intense with each passing month. The initial flicker of doubt about Alaric's character had solidified into a quiet, simmering resentment. Her admiration had curdled into a bitter understanding of his self-serving ambition. She saw him not as a mentor, but as a master strategist, expertly navigating the corridors of power, using others as stepping stones. The reverence she once held for him had vanished, replaced by a profound unease that settled deep in her core. She continued her duties with diligence, but a silent wall had grown between them, built brick by brick with each broken promise and subtle slight. The understanding that the current act of opening the forbidden archive was not an isolated incident, but the culmination of years of Alaric's relentless pursuit of power, regardless of the ethical cost, solidified her resolve. This was not a moment of academic discovery for him. It was a calculated move, the grand finale of his campaign for ultimate influence. The glowing scroll, the triumphant glint in his eyes, all pointed to a man willing to cross any line, even those deemed sacred to achieve his goals. Elena knew, with a chilling certainty, that this was just the beginning of a far more dangerous game. The atmosphere within the archive, already charged with the ancient dust of unearthed secrets, became palpably tense after the initial discovery. Alaric's demeanor, once smoothly charming, shifted subtly but noticeably. He grew increasingly demanding, his voice sharper, his patience thinner. He restricted access to the newly found scroll, even from Elena, who had been present at its unearthing. He cited its fragility, its unprecedented nature, and the need for his singular expertise in its preliminary assessment. Elena understood it was a calculated move, a way to control the narrative from the outset, to ensure he alone dictated the scroll's meaning and significance. Subtle but sharp disagreements over the interpretation and handling of the scroll began to surface, escalating quickly into thinly veiled animosity. Elena advocated for a cautious, scholarly approach, emphasizing the importance of extensive linguistic analysis, historical cross-referencing, and careful preservation. She warned against premature conclusions, reminding him of countless historical documents initially misunderstood. Alaric, however, was impatient. His desire for immediate, sensational revelation overshadowed any academic rigor. He saw the scroll as his ticket to unparalleled recognition, a global spotlight he courted. Their professional relationship, already strained, deteriorated rapidly. Every suggestion Elena made was met with a dismissive wave or a pointed, condescending remark about her overly academic tendencies. Whispers began to circulate among the other archivists and Vatican officials, like rustling leaves in a hidden garden. Some were intrigued by Alaric's discovery, their curiosity piqued by the tantalizing hints of a forbidden archive finally breached. Others were wary, recalling the legends surrounding such sealed collections, tales of dangerous knowledge, of documents hidden for reasons far beyond mere historical preservation. Elena felt the weight of these unspoken judgments. Her association with Alaric, once a source of quiet prestige, now felt like a liability. Colleagues who once sought her insights now averted their gaze or offered quick, nervous smiles, unsure how to navigate the shifting currents of power. Alaric, meanwhile, grew more paranoid. He isolated himself with the scroll, spending long hours behind locked doors, emerging only to issue terse instructions or to snap at anyone who dared question his methods. He dismissed Elena's warnings about the potential dangers of misinterpreting or mishandling such an ancient, powerful document. He scoffed at her suggestions of consulting outside experts in specific archaic languages or symbolic systems. His ambition had blinded him completely, not just to ethical concerns, but to practical ones as well. He saw only the glory, not the potential pitfalls. He believed he alone possessed the intellect to unlock its secrets, and anyone who suggested otherwise was an obstacle to be overcome. Elena experienced an intense internal conflict. The gazes of her colleagues conveyed a mixture of pity and suspicion. Pity for her perceived fall from Alaric's favor, suspicion that she might be somehow complicit in his increasingly unorthodox methods. She felt trapped, caught between her unwavering loyalty to the archive's integrity, the sacred trust placed in their hands, and the powerful, almost irresistible influence of Alaric. To speak out directly would be career suicide, yet to remain silent felt like a profound betrayal of everything she believed in. The cultural context of the Vatican, with its deep-seated deference to authority, weighed heavily on her. The suffocating feeling of being caught in Alaric's escalating obsession grew with each passing day. He was a man possessed, driven by an insatiable hunger for glory. Elena had a growing sense that something profoundly dangerous was unfolding, a chain of events set in motion by a document whose true nature they barely understood. She felt powerless to stop it, yet morally compelled to try. The air in the archive, once a sanctuary of quiet erudition, now felt thick with a looming dread, a premonition of disaster. Then came the discovery that pushed her to the brink. One evening, after Alaric had left, Elena managed to gain temporary access to his private study. Hidden beneath a pile of innocuous theological texts, she found them. Meticulous copies of the scroll, not just photographs, but detailed transcriptions expertly prepared. And not just one set, but several. It became horrifyingly clear that Alaric was preparing to leak its contents, not to the official Vatican press, but to an external secular entity. Bypassing all established protocols, all layers of review and verification. This brazen disregard for their sacred trust, this ultimate act of self-serving ambition, shattered any remaining hesitation Elena held. She knew then that she had to act, no matter the personal cost. The game had just become deadly serious. Elena felt a cold dread settle in her stomach as she examined the copies of the scroll. Alaric's meticulously prepared transcriptions were more than just reproductions. They were a window into his mind, his interpretation, and his ultimate plan. Her fingers traced the lines of the ancient script, her paleographer's eye picking out details Alaric had likely overlooked or ignored. The text itself was complex, hinting at cosmological events, but it was the intricate diagrams that truly caught her attention. Hidden within the flowing lines and arcane symbols, she began to discern a pattern. It wasn't just a historical record or a prophecy. It was a complex astronomical chart, one that aligned with a specific apocalyptic celestial event. She spent the next few days in a feverish blur, cross-referencing the diagrams with obscure astrological treatises she'd unearthed from the deeper, less frequented sections of the archive. Her initial hunch solidified into a terrifying certainty. The scroll was not merely historical, it was a dangerous blueprint, a set of instructions for something far grander and far more perilous than Alaric's self-serving ambition could ever comprehend. His interpretation, driven by a desire for fame and personal glory, was not just incomplete, it was grossly flawed and potentially catastrophic. He saw a key to power, but Elena saw a trigger for disaster. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The scroll in Alaric's hands was a weapon pointed at the world. She understood then that she had a choice: remain silent and allow Alaric to unleash something unimaginable, or expose him and the true nature of the scroll. The decision was agonizing. She knew it would destroy her career, the very life she had meticulously built within the Vatican. It could even endanger her life given the forces Alaric was clearly willing to stir. Yet the integrity of the archives, the trust placed in her as a guardian of sacred knowledge, and a profound sense of moral duty left her no other path. She would expose him, no matter the personal cost. Alaric, meanwhile, sensing Elena's growing resistance and perhaps the quiet shift in her demeanor, became overtly hostile. His charming facade had completely crumbled, revealing a man consumed by paranoia and a desperate need for control. He began to actively discredit her, spreading rumors among their colleagues and even to higher-ranking officials. He questioned her mental stability, suggesting she was overworked and prone to fanciful interpretations. He subtly implied she was disloyal to the Church, hinting at her unorthodox research methods. His actions were desperate, reckless, and designed to isolate her completely, making any future claims she might make seem unreliable. He wanted to silence her before she could even speak. Just as Elena felt most alone, a sliver of unexpected opportunity appeared. During a rare late-night visit to the archive's rarely used reading room, she had a chance encounter with an elderly cardinal, known for his deep knowledge of obscure Vatican lore. Cardinal Vincenzo was a figure of quiet authority, a man whose wisdom was sought by few but respected by all who knew him. He was rumored to have spent decades poring over forgotten texts, his mind a labyrinth of ancient secrets and forgotten histories. He had heard fragments of the rumors circulating about Alaric's discovery and Elena's sudden disfavor. There was a flicker of concern in his aged eyes, a subtle recognition that something was amiss. He sensed a deeper truth, an intuition honed by years of navigating the Vatican's intricate political landscape, and offered Elena his discreet support. His words were few, but his presence was a lifeline. Elena, emboldened by this unexpected ally, meticulously prepared her findings. She presented them to Cardinal Vincenzo in the quiet solitude of his personal study, far from Alaric's prying eyes. She detailed the scroll's true meaning, walking him through the complex astronomical alignments and cross-referencing the ancient text with contemporary celestial charts. She laid out Alaric's reckless plans to disseminate a dangerously misinterpreted document to the world. The cardinal, initially skeptical, his face a mask of careful consideration, became visibly shaken as Elena unveiled the undeniable evidence of the celestial alignment and the apocalyptic instructions hidden within the scroll. His initial skepticism gave way to a profound understanding and a chilling dread. This revelation shattered the illusion of Alaric's authority and exposed the profound danger he was about to unleash upon the world. Elena's act of defiance was not just against Alaric, it was a stand for truth, for integrity, and for the preservation of a world that stood on the brink of an unwitting precipice. Her passive suffering had ended. She had transitioned from a victim of manipulation to an active resistor, setting the stage for a confrontation that would shake the very foundations of the Vatican and beyond. The game, as she had suspected, was now deadly serious and she was ready to play. Elena felt a cold wave of fear wash over her. A constant companion since her meeting with Cardinal Vincenzo, the weight of her secret, the knowledge of the scroll's true meaning, and the impending confrontation with Alaric pressed down on her, creating a maelstrom of emotions. Doubt gnawed at her, whispering insidious questions about her ability to challenge such a powerful and entrenched figure within the Vatican. A profound sense of loneliness enveloped her, despite the cardinal's quiet support. She knew she was standing against a tide of ambition and ingrained tradition, and the sheer enormity of it all was almost paralyzing. Every shadow seemed to hold Alaric's watchful gaze. Every hushed conversation felt like a judgment. True to her fears, Alaric wasted no time in launching his counter-offensive. News of Elena's meeting with Cardinal Vincenzo must have reached him, because the next morning her access to the Vatican's secret archives was revoked without explanation. A terse, official
Alaric,
notice
the energy,
cited
it's sketching shadows on the paper.
insubordination
I see it,
and
Elena.
unauthorized
Stay close to me.
dissemination of restricted materials. The accusation of heresy, though not officially stated, hung heavy in the air, whispered through the ancient corridors. Her reputation, painstakingly built over years of quiet dedication, was systematically dismantled by Alaric's carefully placed insinuations and outright lies. He used his extensive network, his charisma, and his rapidly growing influence to isolate her, turning colleagues she once considered friends into wary strangers. However, Eleanor's actions did not go unnoticed by everyone. The elderly cardinal, despite his reclusive nature, quietly began to mobilize his own network. He reached out to trusted scholars and theologians, men and women who shared his deep concern for the Vatican's integrity and its sacred mission. These were individuals who valued truth over power and who had long harbored their own quiet suspicions about Alaric's meteoric rise. They began to discreetly investigate Alaric's past, unearthing minor inconsistencies and moments of questionable judgment that, when viewed through the lens of recent events, painted a much darker picture. They also delved into the true nature of the scroll, cross-referencing Elena's findings with their own vast esoteric knowledge. These allies, operating in the shadows, became Elena's quiet shield, gathering information and building a case against Alaric. Yet for every ally, there seemed to be two more who actively worked against Elena. Other Vatican officials, either genuinely swayed by Alaric's persuasive charm or simply fearing his growing power, reinforced the accusations against her. The rigid cultural dynamics of the Church meant that challenging a rising star like Alaric was not just difficult, but potentially career-ending. Few dared to openly question him, preferring to protect their own positions rather than risk the ire of a man clearly on the ascent. Elena found herself ostracized, walking through the Vatican's ornate halls with a heavy heart, her presence met with averted gazes and hushed whispers. To make matters worse, the news of a forbidden archive and a dangerous prophecy began to leak, albeit in distorted forms, into the secular world. The sensationalist media, always hungry for a dramatic story, latched onto the rumors. Headlines screamed about Vatican secrets and apocalyptic predictions, misinterpreting the complex events and adding another layer of chaos and pressure to Elena's already strained situation. She saw her life, her work, and the sacred trust she held being twisted and sensationalized, all because of Alaric's reckless ambition. The profound psychological impact of this period was immense. Elena endured intense public scrutiny, albeit from a distance, and professional ostracization within the institution she had dedicated her entire life to. She was forced to confront the true cost of her integrity, battling not only Alaric's malicious campaign, but also the deeply ingrained conservatism and fear within the Vatican itself. She felt the immense weight of centuries of secrecy, power struggles, and the constant tension between faith and knowledge. Every day was a struggle, a test of her resolve. But the memory of the scroll's true nature, the apocalyptic instructions it contained, fueled her, reminding her that what she was fighting for was far greater than her own personal suffering. She had to prevail. Elena, with the quiet but unwavering support of Cardinal Vincenzo and his growing network of allies, began the painstaking process of rebuilding from the ashes of Alaric's campaign. They worked meticulously, gathering every piece of evidence, cross-referencing ancient texts, and piecing together the true apocalyptic nature of the scroll. This was not a public spectacle, but a series of discreet high-level meetings culminating in a secret ecclesiastical court, a tribunal convened away from the sensationalist glare of the media. Here, in hushed chambers, Elena presented her findings, her voice calm but resolute, detailing Alaric's reckless interpretation and the catastrophic potential of his plans. The weight of her evidence, supported by the cardinal's scholarly backing, was irrefutable. Alaric, confident in his power and influence, initially dismissed the proceedings as a mere formality, a minor inconvenience orchestrated by a disgruntled archivist and an aging cardinal. But as Elena systematically laid out the facts, demonstrating how his ambition had blinded him to the scroll's true, dangerous instructions, his composure began to crack. The court, composed of seasoned theologians and historians, recognized the profound danger of misinterpreting such a document. Alaric's grand plans to exploit the scroll for personal glory, to reshape history in his own image, crumbled under the sheer weight of truth. He was stripped of his titles, his authority, and exiled from the Vatican, his reputation irrevocably destroyed. He was not publicly condemned, but quietly removed, a fate perhaps worse for a man so consumed by ambition. The forbidden nature of the archive, once seen by Alaric as an obstacle to overcome for fame, was now universally understood as a protective measure, a sacred responsibility to safeguard humanity from its own hubris. The scroll itself was resealed, its true, chilling dangers now fully understood. Its secrets were once again guarded, but with a renewed sense of purpose and caution, a quiet acknowledgement of the fine line between knowledge and destruction. For Elena, her career in the traditional sense was indeed over. The Vatican, even after Alaric's downfall, was not a place for those who had openly challenged its hierarchy. Yet she found a new, profound calling. The cardinal, recognizing her unique intellect and unwavering integrity, facilitated her transition to an independent scholar. She continued her work, researching ancient texts,
truth, Your
but
Eminence.
now with a deep personal understanding of the immense power and responsibility that came with knowledge. She became a quiet guardian of truth, her sharp intellect now dedicated to ensuring that such dangerous secrets were never again exploited by reckless ambition. Elena often reflected on her journey, from the quiet Umbrian hills to the heart of the Vatican's deepest secrets. She had seen the best and worst of humanity, the noble pursuit of knowledge corrupted by the hunger for power. The experience had forged her, transforming her from a humble archivist into a silent protector of history, a sentinel against the forces that sought to twist truth for personal gain. She learned that some battles are fought not with grand gestures, but with meticulous research, quiet defiance, and an unwavering commitment to what is right. The Forbidden Scroll, despite all that had transpired, retained its enigmatic power. Its true origins, its full purpose, remained shrouded in a veil of ancient mystery. Elena knew that not all questions had answers, and some mysteries, even after being revealed, retained their enigmatic power, a constant reminder of the vast, unknown depths of human history and the universe itself. The resolution was not a complete unraveling of every secret, but a return to balance, a triumph of ethical scholarship over reckless ambition, and a testament to the enduring strength of integrity in the face of overwhelming odds. The world had been spared, not by a hero with a sword, but by a quiet archivist with an unyielding commitment to truth.